All right, so welcome everybody. So we are back here. I believe this is our ninth Industry Partnership Subcommittee public meeting. So we are going to get started today, and we're going to have no speakers, but we're going to be more of a working meeting. And let me first do a quick roll call just to see. So we got Kristen, Keith, David, Nicole, and I see Luke, but Luke is visiting as an observer today. Okay, so we've got the four of you. Don't have a quorum, but we can certainly get started. And this is going to be more of a working meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kristen, and let's get it rolling.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. I know everyone is so busy. So what we'd like to do today is we're going to kind of at a high level go through, talk about our report. Hopefully everyone had a chance to read it. I'm going to go around and just get people's observations, feedback. We do have a recommendation briefing sheet we have to pull together for the meeting. So we'll be working on that a little bit, or see if somebody can take that offline and help us pull that together. And then I thought we could just have some discussion about some forward focus items around meeting minutes, speakers, and then some discussion around the other recommendations we left on the table at a very high level. Because I know there's been some concerns. I've felt the concerns that people still kind of feel like these are the two and the rest kind of fell off, and that's not the case. This is an ongoing working subcommittee, and we will continue to be curating recommendations for GSA. So with that, let me just start by, we can either call it up, but I'd like to just go around and get your impressions of the report. There's been a lot of hands on it, a lot of great feedback. So let me just do that. We'll spend a few minutes talking about that. David, do you mind if I start with you? Have you had a chance to read it, and any overall comments or feedback?
So when you talk about the report, this is the 4-page document?
Correct. I'm sorry. Yeah, we can actually call that up.
I didn't know if there was another report that perhaps.
No. So that, and hopefully you've had time to read the other subcommittees reports as well. If not, I highly encourage that everybody goes on there. And it looks like Stacy has joined us. So yeah, I'm talking about our recommendations, the two recommendations.
And I just dropped the link on the chat there. So Dave, you can grab it from the chat and then share again.
Thank you, Boris, because I found one that was 10 pages and one that was 2 pages.
Yeah, that's the one on the chat.
Okay, I got it.
I guess disclosure, I was involved in part of it, second recommendation for the maturity model. So overall, I thought the document is very well written document. It coheres very well together. I think the two recommendations are really on point. Alluding to the, I guess, the acquisition workforce subcommittee and sort of change management, I think that's going to be key to getting these things sort of implemented in the way envisioned in the document. Recommendation 1, it's absolutely necessary to identify, engage, and onboard innovative new entrants. And that's kind of coupled with the maturity model to sort of have those two things work in harmony together to get us the largest climate benefits in the minimum amount of time, given the world that we live in. Well done.
Good. And I appreciate that. And David, that comment was your comment. It really resonated with me when we spoke a few weeks ago now, 3-4 weeks ago, when we were pulling this together, that really galvanizes, like, hey, the sense of urgency, and we want to move fast and move those levers as quickly as possible. So I appreciate that.
And for my part, thank you. And for my part, I didn't know anything about maturity models, but wow, I mean, what a powerful thing a tool to use to achieve objectives over sort of a pathway that's achievable. So kudos on that as well.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and we are including, I think, Boris, we're going to include the white paper, the maturity model white paper, that is really a compilation of examples and visuals that kind of put that in perspective.
Yeah, we can call that an appendix. So we're going to consolidate just for process, just talk a little bit about process. So we're going to consolidate the 3 recommendation documents from each of the subcommittees, and we're going to have a cover letter that Troy and Cassius would sign. And so when we consolidate the 3 recommendations, we're going to have some appendices there. So there will be at least, I know Acquisition Workforce has 1 appendix, and you guys have the 1 appendix for the maturity model. So there'll be a couple, and we'll number everything accordingly. But that is the plan. And I did look at the white paper on maturity models, and I agree with David. I think they're on point.
Great. No, I think that's good, and it'll be interesting. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see how GSA takes these recommendations and if they require anything else of the subcommittee, like going forward. So, as we after the May 4th meeting, you know, I assume Boris will submit those. They'll have time to digest them, and then they'll give us some feedback.
Yeah, and so a little more on process. So after the May 4th meeting, we will then get input perhaps from public comments. We could possibly get input from Crystal or Jeff at the meeting, the administrator. So anything else that we pick up, we will then consolidate that. If we have anything, I'm assuming, you know, you really can't assume it's going to be completely zero devoid of comments, but after the May 4th meeting, then we'll make sure that we finalize the report and the cover letter, and then that will go to the administrator of GSA, but it will move its way through the chain of command, which will start with Jeff and company. So that makes sense. So that's the plan for us.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you. Keith, any comments or questions? Also, if any of you have any questions, certainly this is a great time for us to discuss them as we go forward.
Well, so I haven't had a chance to really just dive into it. The part that grabbed me was recommendation number 1, because if you remember on our first meeting, this has been pretty consistent with what we thought that, you know, we needed, and it's gone from a bunch of discussions. It's grown, and I really like where we are with the way that we've worded, you know, the recommendation and what we're looking at. But I applaud, you know, the fact that it's been, you know, consistent. It's something that we wanted, and I know I brought it up from day 1 about bringing in, you know, the right people, right? So, you know, I'll just say that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if we were to go back through our notes, this one has been, for lack of a better word, a persistent, right? A persistent kind of drumbeat coming forward. So I appreciate that. And
you remember we had some discussions about how we worded, what do we say, you know, back and forth on it. Yeah, but I think that we've settled, and we've been able to get, I think, the full meaning and kind of deliver it the right way. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let me check in with Nicole, our fearless AWS leader. Probably eating. Okay, let me
Nicole, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I was acknowledging that Stacy's hand's up, so we may want to touch base with her first.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, Stacy,
No,
go ahead.
no worries. Nothing major. I think I'm really excited and proud of the 2 recommendations we're putting forward. I agree with the need for the white paper to be attached, because I didn't know what a maturity model was before we dug into this, and that was really helpful. I think it sounds really cool, but having the white paper that was put together will help, I think, folks that aren't really familiar with that. And then I was just curious, you know, we're putting forth the 2 recommendations. We know there's other things. We've said it in words or in just, you know, out loud, that there are other things we may want to recommend, and that it's not just these 2 things. I don't know if we want to say something like that at the end, that there's another group of things that we are looking at in terms of topics or items, just so that it's clear there's more. And
yeah, I think we have that. We have that in there. Actually,
is that in here? Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
Is it in there? Okay, I missed that part. Sorry about that. But I think it's
no,
important.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. It's in there, and then it'll also be part of the PowerPoint that we present at the May 4th meeting.
Okay,
Hey, Dave, if you want to
perfect.
scroll
Yeah.
down to the bottom, and you'll see it if you scroll down.
You know, though, I think, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I think why this is missed is it's in the recommendation summary. And maybe you should call out next steps as a separate subsection here. Or
Okay.
maybe the title just changes from recommendation summary because you talk about moving.
Yeah, I think
forward.
I was assuming it was a summary of the stuff that we'd set up above versus what other things that we may want to bring forward later. You can see it's in there now that I'm reading it, but
Yeah, so maybe changing it to next steps or something else might be the way to.
Mhm.
Yeah, whatever, we probably should be consistent though, right, Boris, just across the three?
Yeah, we'd have to look at the what the other two say so that we have some consistency. I know single-use plastic does not have a and David, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a discussion on the other. Maybe in the introduction, there is a little bit on the other recommendations. But yeah,
Okay.
we'll look at that.
Yep, we'll take that
that's-
as an action. And
That's a
have-
good flag. Yeah.
Definitely.
So I can tell you from the acquisition workforce that we have a summary at the end. It's just a landing point of a couple of sentences, but then we do have a next step section to sort of forecast what's going to come, in part because we would like for there to be some sort of discussion more broadly about whether these are the priorities that would be received well.
Mhm.
Very good. Yep, we'll make sure we get that changed and that we're consistent. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's good.
So shall I jump in now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. So I'm really pleased, Kristen, like, holy moly, what you and others have done on this. It's been pretty fantastic to see it come together. Recommendation 1, I think, is solid. And I'm particularly pleased to see that connection with the Small Business Administration and the call outs to the different exemplars that are out there. It helps anchor this recommendation in a way that I think that one can imagine how this would move forward. As you know, I've spent more time with recommendation 2. And I'm glad I had that opportunity because I, like David and Stacy and others, had very little connectivity or connection with maturity models up until now. It's caused me to wonder, why in the world did I not have interaction and engagement with maturity models? Because I think 100% this is the way to go. I also want to call out something that David said, though, too, about the change management portion of this. I think that on some level, we need to think about how at a really broad level with it across our different committees, how we might be able to fit this within a broader framework so that we can imagine. Because I don't think that we have thought about this in our different subcommittees about what comes first and what comes second. Is there a sequence towards getting this done? And I think that's where a change management model can help us think that through, not necessarily at this point in time, but as we move our work forward. Like Stacy, I believe that the addendums to those maturity models are going to be really important, but overall, I think it's just terrific to see how this has moved forward and the shape that it's taken. So I think congratulations to you, to Farad, and to the rest of the subcommittee.
Yeah, and to the team. You know, you bring up a really good, interesting point about sequencing. And Boris, I don't know if that's something Troy and Cassius have been thinking about, you know, because we kind of have these 3 disparate groups, but is there required sequencing to even make these individual recommendations more effective? So, really.
So I can share some thoughts, and Stephanie, feel free to jump into as well. This is more of a conversation right now. I say that 2 things. As and I've looked at all 6 recommendations here, I feel like there is definitely connection among them. What's going to determine the sequence is going to be when Jeff starts reading these. So I'm going to share all of them by the end of today. So after this meeting, I have a message queued up ready to send. He's going to look at that and he'll definitely give you feedback. No doubt about it. But he'll also be the one to say, okay, for where we are at GSA, I feel that we can do number 2, number 3. He'll pick out on the things that he feels will have the most chance of success in the short term. because remember, the reason we've been going at this like 100 miles an hour, it's like we have a moment of, right now, I mean, it's a sweet spot. Right now, there is funding. There is an administrator that is all about doing this. We have an administration that is all about doing this. And Jeff has been around long enough. He knows that, if we don't capture that momentum, we miss out. It's like a window of opportunity. So he's gonna know, he's gonna look at these and he's gonna say, okay, we need to focus on these two first. And then he's gonna come back and literally give you that feedback, saying that kind of thing. So that will help, that'll sort of work out the sequencing. Not to say that we wouldn't do the other things. So GSA will make the determination, but Jeff will be a key player in sort of making that call because of his knowledge of the organization. I don't know, Stephanie, if you wanted to add any more to that perspective, because we were talking about that a bit.
Yeah, no, I think you've captured it well, Boris. I think, Jeff will look at it based on the need. And as we've been mentioning, which ones he think would be more impactful immediately and effective. And then he'll just go from there.
Yeah. Now we could get feedback from GSA that says, and we don't know till more people start looking at it, say, yeah, we like these recommendations. We would love for you to do a phase 2. Perhaps, like some of the things that Nicole's team is putting in, and some of the things we're putting together here. You say, yeah, I like that. Could we do a phase 2? Maybe in the maturity models, maybe there's a little more research. And so there's a second recommendation versus moving on to some of the others. But it's a good idea to have the others there so they'll be able to see what else you all are thinking, because you might get some feedback that says, yeah, let's go ahead and work on something that will get large business with small business partner up, because, and that's where, we're pulling out of the magic curtain and then starting to see a broader set of eyes looking at what's going on. But looks like David and Nicole have a hand up. I'm not sure which one went first.
David was first.
So thank you. I just want to get back to sort of change management, and Boris, you were mentioning about the 6 recommendations. This is more of a question, maybe shows my lack of knowledge about change management, but it strikes me based on my experience with the policy procedures subcommittee on the single-use plastic and packaging, that seemed like much more of a finite kind of endeavor.
Right.
And it strikes me that it's likely that the 6 recommendations have different degrees of difficulty. And I just don't know how change management looks at which ones require the biggest, amount of management versus other ones. And maybe that's a way that GSA might look at it, and which ones require much more hands-on than others. And I would be interested in the other committee members, thoughts on that.
Yeah, those are good points. I totally agree. And I think it's going to, but you're right, David, the single-use plastics is going to be a very discrete on point, which I'd say was very well written. Just looking at it, it was just like really, really well done. But yeah, I think that could be something. Yeah, thank you. We're going to take that one and we're going to keep rocking and rolling with what we're already doing there. And that's just going to be just what we needed now to push the next step on something else that they're working on, but I'm facilitating now.
That's okay. Yeah, I don't want to
back to you. I'm sorry.
We're having
Yeah,
such a good
back to you.
conversation. But yeah, so
Back to you.
Nicole, go ahead, and then I see Antonio has his hand up.
I'm gonna let Antonio jump in because we haven't heard from him yet, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay.
All right, and so it's good to be on. I'm only on for a short bit. I had a brief window where I could at least join part of the call. I just wanted to kind of share a couple of general points of feedback. Having had a chance to look through actually all 3 of the recommendations from the different subcommittees, it's really pretty impressive to see what this group who has come together in really a short amount of months when you think about it, what's already been put together. And I think each one of them certainly has their focus point, which is great. I was really glad to see the way the Industry Partners Committee pulled together the information and the focus particularly around trying to do more to bring in innovative new entrants. because this is it's the future of how so much of our work is going to be done is through, environmentally friendly policies and practices and programs and products. And if we don't include, that those who are not already at the table in a significant way, we'll never get to where we could get to as a country if we've left some of those other groups behind. So I think the language really around new entrants should resonate very well with GSA. It's something that's very, very much a point of discussion and ongoing planning and work at the OMB White House. We're all looking at how do we help improve the number of new entrants, small businesses who haven't actually been able to get into the contracting space, because that number is literally on about a 12-year decline, and it's about to hit half of where it was just a dozen years ago, unless some hockey stick changes happen in the trajectory. So I think this has a lot of promise, and it'll be interesting to hear exactly what the feedback is from the GSA leadership on this particular one, but all of them as we move forward. So I also just want to say congratulations for all the great work that the committee put forward on this.
Yeah, I'd like.
Yeah, great. I'm sorry, Nicole. Yeah, just it's good to see you. And I'm recollecting back to the session you did with us with Dr. Peebles, and
Yes.
There were so many nuggets out of that helped inform our group. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah. Antonio said something that got me thinking. I'm working on a grant proposal right now, and this really interesting statistic hit my desk as I'm doing research for this proposal. And it was that 15% of all federal contracts are given to women and minority-owned businesses, but yet women in small business contracts, 15% of small business contracts go to women and minority-owned businesses, but yet the pool of potential applicants accounts for 40%.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So when we talk about only being able to reach a small number of the possibility, that statistic just hit me in the face for a variety of reasons, just talking about the work that I'm doing on the proposal, but the work here of this subcommittee in particular, that we have a real opportunity to start addressing the issues that come forward with this huge difference in possibility versus actuality at this moment in time. And if we can figure out ways to level that out, to reduce that gap, I think that this would be just a fantastic accomplishment of the subcommittee, or at least provide enough recommendations related to what we know works so that we could think at a much higher level about how these pieces fit together. That would be incredible. That was the observation from Antonio's point, but I had a very, very tactical question for Boris and Stephanie, and that is our first suite of recommendations are rolling out for May 4th. Originally, we were target shooting for around April. I'm curious if there is a target shooting date for the next set of recommendations that is already out there, so that we can begin imagining what the time frame looks like as we move full steam ahead after May 4th.
So short answer, no on that, but I was going to bring in Stephanie into the conversation too.
Okay.
And that's something that we'll need to talk about when we're all together, when we do the admin meeting. So that was one of the things I wanted to put on the agenda to discuss among the committee, just what we're thinking on our perspectives based on what we've learned and looking at the next months ahead. If feedback from GSA will help kind of guide that, definitely the feedback that we get from GSA will help kind of get a sense for what's not only interested in, but also timeframes. But Stephanie, I'll go ahead. But go ahead. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're at a different starting point. I think about where
but
we
there
were.
There isn't a target date. Just wanted to say that.
Okay. I think about where we were when we first convened in October versus where we are now. Like, we're at a very, very different place. And We know our subcommittees, we've developed a mission, we've developed priorities, and that took up a huge chunk of time. So I feel like we're poised to really, we're running, and I want to figure out how to keep the momentum going, but having some sense of what those target dates are, I think are going to be really important.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Stefan.
I just wanted to agree with Boris. I think now that we've run through the process and everything, and even as the administrator receives, when she receives the recommendations, we'll have a better understanding of how the process works. And I think that will give them a better understanding of how to time things out based on the need. But what I wanted to mention, I'm not sure if it was ever brought up, GSA is a very large organization with various services within it. And with 6 recommendations, do not be surprised if you don't have 3 going on at one time in different areas. So I'm not sure if we've even thought about, maybe IT might want to take on one, and maybe FAS wants to take on one. So I just wanted to put that out there as something to just put in the back of minds.
That's good, thanks. And then, I think so many of these are going to require some level of partnership, interagency partnership. So that'll be interesting too, to see how that unfolds as we go forward, because there is so much overlap. So it's super interesting.
Hey, look, we wanted to invite you into this conversation. We're having more of an open conversation today. So since you're around and you've been knee deep on the other, I don't know if you had a perspective you wanted to share to me, if you're able to.
Well, what are you looking for my perspective on, Boris?
Just anything from what you've seen, if you had a chance to review the like the industry partnerships recommendations. Just curious to see if you had a thought on how that fits in maybe with what you guys have been working on, and the things that you have on the docket, because you have some really interesting recommendations you want to develop after this one.
Yeah, no, I think we have benefited from the synergy of having some overlap of some folks on different committees. So I think we have somewhat channeled each other a little bit and not stepped on anybody's toes. But I mean, overall, I think the work that this committee did, and I think the workforce committee, I mean, it is, extremely impressive. Like the ability to put together these thoughtfully, well-crafted, well-developed recommendations on relatively short notice, because I think I'll say we took a long time to get started, right? And to capitalize on what Nicole is saying, like the engine is now churning, and how do we keep the engine moving? How do we keep capitalizing on the enthusiasm and the momentum? I think is what, is our next challenge, right? Because we're not taking a breath on May 4th and taking the summer off. We are theoretically achieving the low-hanging fruit, the recommendations out of the gate. And what's next? How do we start to develop that vision for our folks on our committees to keep them kind of engaged and enthusiastic? But overall, I share the same. I share whatever. I'm totally in a line. This was a great body of work so far. And my own comments, I think, I had some comments on some of the papers. They were minimal at best. I feel like the brain power that was put into these was, really impressive. But thank you for putting me on the spot there while I was trying to
wanted your voice, Luke.
I was trying to lurk in the background just to watch you guys, and you put me on the spot. So
no chance. Okay.
I'd like to echo something Luke said, that it's a double-edged sword, serving on 2 subcommittees, but if I have to reflect back on it, the benefit of, I learned a lot watching Nicole work, from like how I could bring some of that into our subcommittee. And I think there was great value in that, I found, for me. So, and I like that we're having the chairs meetings now so we can all connect. So I just want to say I appreciated that. And I would say, if we're going forward, even though it's a lot, I think all of us did a pretty good job understanding who was on multiple committees, right? And as far as workload, but the value in it, I think far outweighed the work input required. For me, I don't want to speak for anyone else. I don't want to speak for Nicole. Okay. All right. I think is there anyone else that wants to comment on our report? Because I feel like it's being airlifted into the DFO's hands for consolidation and air gapping up to GSA. So this is our last chance. All right. Excellent. What I'd like to do now, if we could, we won't actually go in and start typing because I don't think that's a good use of people's time, but could, David, could we call up just the template for the report out so we can just kind of walk through that for the group? And so it's the PowerPoint. I believe it's under the.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you know where it is. Now you guys have turned me into a Google Drive maniac. So what we'll do is, and I can certainly do this, I'll cut and paste and we'll kind of craft some language, but there's some parts in this where they want some kind of artistic, kind of, innovative language that I think we as a team, people's input would be great on that. So what we'll do is if you can keep up with me, David, as we walk through it. So similar to the last full meeting, we'll just kind of reinforce who's on the subcommittee. And then we'll talk about, I believe slide 2 will be our areas of focus. Yep. So this comes right off of us. This is very consistent language we've been using all along, our mission and priority areas. And then I believe we'll lay out our recommendations. So we will list out our 2 recommendations, and then we'll go into, if we go ahead to the next one, I don't have the whole thing memorized at this point. So a brief description, rationale, again, we'll pull that out of the report, right? We have this all laid out in the report. So it's a matter of just pulling out and gleaming that from the report.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You have more than enough in the report to create this briefing deck. It's just a matter of finding those strategic words that ties to resonate with you guys. The ones like, wow, this really tells our story. Well, I mean, you have a ton of content on that report that you can pull into this.
Yes, and I had a question for you. So if we go back to slide 5, are you envisioning, Boris, so would we have one of the things I just wanted to make sure I was clear on. So we have 2 recommendations. So how do you envision that playing out here? Do you envision us going through?
Yeah, you would build that for each one of them. So you would duplicate this for each recommendation. So recommendation 1, you tell the story. Recommendation 2, you tell the story. So you will replicate that. Yeah, okay. And for pacing, for each of the subcommittees, well, we have the leaders from the 3 subcommittees here, so this is probably good we're having a conversation. Is you're going to be looking at about 20 minutes to tell the story, and then about 10 minutes for Q&A. And that Q&A will be with members only. So that's just it will be a member discussion, so that we will not even involve anybody but just the members on the Q&A. And so that's what we're looking at, about half hour. So the agenda that we designed has each subcommittee basically having a half hour to tell the story and then have some discussion. No, we're not going to do voting till the very end, after the 3 subcommittees. So just pacing. But to answer your question, yeah, you would kind of use this, and we're trying to be consistent on the content, but you can be as creative as you want to tell the story. I mean, the recommendation report will be the full story, but this is like the highlights. This is your moment of glory, because you're going to have a public audience here. We expect a lot of virtual participants, so we're getting a lot of people signing up right now. And then in the room, we have a capacity of 50 observers in the room, and there could be members of the media there. So that's a whole nother thing. But anyway, so expect you'll have an audience when you're telling your story. So you definitely want to connect to the hearts.
Okay, but we will go like slides 3, 4, 5, 6, I think it is for recommendation 1, and then do 3, 4, 5.
Sure.
And is that how in series?
Yeah, that's the way I envisioned. The what, however many, you know, and there you can use more or less slides. The number of slides is not that big of a deal because you could have few words on a slide. You could have multiple slides. That it's just how you unfold in the story.
Okay.
So, and
Right.
I don't know, Stephanie, if you had any other thoughts here, because I mean, this is to give you an idea where we want to go.
No, I don't. I think she read it right. If she
Okay.
can just duplicate these slides and she can have as many slides as she wants. It's really about the timing, not necessarily the number of slides.
Yeah,
Correct.
and the same goes for you, Nicole, when you guys put the story together. Again, that's how you best tell the story. So you're looking, oh, it looks like for us jumping in. Yay.
Hey, Parad. Okay, and then David, if you could just scroll down, one more. Okay, yeah, that's where the slide is. Okay, so this is where then we would lay out future focus recommendations.
Mm-hmm. And this is a little vanilla flavor. I mean, you can spice it up. You can, you know, basically this is where the rest of the story kind of goes. Remember Paul Harvey, here's the rest of the story. The other things that we're working on that we want to work on. So, but that's the idea. So you give the audience an opportunity to see there are other things that you're considering.
Okay, and so for the group that's on, and we'll have to do some messaging to the rest of the subcommittee is, you know, one of the things that'll be important is particularly if you have some passion that you want to be able to weigh in on in helping to tell the story, that would be good. I think, you know, the more we can have engagement across and hear different voices, that will be good, but we'll work through that. So to make sure we have a good cadence and that we stay on point and stay on time as we go forward. So is there a date you would like the slides done by?
So we're looking to do a dry run on next Tuesday. So next Tuesday, the 25th. You don't have to have the slides all done by then, but if you have at least the first draft or a pretty good idea what you want to include, that would be a good time to bring whatever you have. Don't have to be final. I'd say final. We're looking for Friday the 28th. So that'll be a week from this Friday is when we wanted to have everything wrapped up, pulled together, and find a nice little bow. And
Okay.
we'll consolidate the 3 subcommittee presentations into a single deck, which we're going to show through. And then when we do the dry run, we'll talk a lot more logistics and specifics on how things are going to flow in the room, as well as the virtual, because it will be a hybrid meeting. So we've been thinking a lot about all the moving pieces.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nicole, you have a
Nicole.
question?
Yeah, so in light of these 2 dates that you've just described, and you've already mentioned the 3rd, but I haven't thought about it in relation to the other 2 dates. When do we expect to receive feedback from GSA? So we might think about how this connects to our slides.
Yeah, we're looking. So when I send my message today, I'm going to give Jeff and their team till the 24th.
Okay.
Till next week. So that would be Monday, by close of business Monday is what I'm asking for, comments, feedback they may have. And then I'm going to feed that back to you all. Oh, actually, you're going to see it because they're going to be on the document. So you'll see their feedback.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then and I'm sorry, I probably should know this, but is the 25th dry run, is that open to the full committee?
To the full committee, right? Okay. We just want everybody, and we're not planning, it's a 3-hour meeting, so we're not going to do a 3-hour dry run. We're just going to do 1 hour. It'll be just going through the run of show, flow of events, how we're going to transition from one to another, and then just making sure everybody feels comfortable with just the details, and I'll communicate a little more about the actual space where we're going to be and all of that.
Hey, Boris, is that a public meeting?
No, it's not. No, the dry run is not a public meeting. So it's a preparatory meeting for our public meeting, right?
Okay, great. That's helpful. So Farad, we kind of did a go around and got feedback on the document and had a lot of discussion about you know, GSA feedback and just what the next steps are for getting ready for the meeting. So that's where we kind of are left off. So if you wanted to weigh in.
No, I think I've weighed in already. I mean, it's just, I think now we're at a point where we're just closing this out to make a presentation, make sure we align with GSA, and then see how we can use this stuff to accelerate other ideas that we have. And I'm really looking forward to the integration of the committees. Actually, I don't believe that we've done that conversation out loud, right? Of the other committees that have been working. So it's gonna be really good to see how we integrate these ideas so that we can all work together.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, Nicole talked about sequencing too. Like, you know, when you look at these ideas collectively, like, is there a natural sequencing that should take place? So that'll be interesting to hear.
So let me talk to that for a little bit. I think you raised a good point. So I've been talking with Troy, and poor Troy, she's on vacation this week. She's actually in Ireland. So we've been talking, but she's been thinking exactly what you just said, Farad, just really integrating the 3 reports. And so she's gonna do the cover letter, and in her remarks, she's gonna do her pitch to really tie it all together in a nice package.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be really important for us all to come together, seeing how we work together as a team and what we need to do. I think the challenge is gonna be as we add additional stuff, how do we do that too? But we have a 2-year appointment or a 1-year appointment.
Yeah, 2 years and 2 years and 3 years. So there is a mix
So,
of that.
all right. Thank you.
Right.
And Kristen, thank you for your leadership in making sure that it was all organized well and moving things forward. I mean, the committee, I mean, we owe you just I mean, you, it was important for people to understand that you're like, I don't do last minute, and last minute doesn't do me. And so I got that really clear, and that was really wonderful and powerful because it allowed us to get to this point. So I think it's going to be really a great time. So I look forward to where we go next week, and then the week after when we all come together.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I gotta be honest with you, I mean, you know, I can do a lot of things, but it's the subject matter expertise that is the real magic here, which all of you bring to the table. And I've learned so much. It's unbelievable. On that note, before we move on to just a couple of quick administrative things, I did want to share with the group, and I'll go back through my notes. But I did attend the ACT-IAC Climate Summit on Monday, and it was very good. A lot of panels, a lot of federal, but there was one panel in particular on state and local. And I want to get the speakers' names from that. There was a young woman from Michigan, and she dealt with some of the smaller counties and towns. So very interesting perspective. And it was the city of Arlington, and there was a state rep from Virginia. So hearing kind of their perspectives on how large federal things kind of roll down and they actually have to execute on it might be some potential future speakers for some of our subcommittees. So I will organize that and kind of get some information together for folks on that. I will share with you, I got to introduce a panel. So I asked people, you know, I did a little plug for the FAC, how many people had heard about it. And so in a room of about 50 people, you know, maybe 10 hands came up. And then somebody else asked about the proposed rules, how many people knew about it, and maybe half the hands came up, you know, so it just kind of proved the point that reinforced that, you know, when you're in it and you're working on it, you think everybody is in it and working on it and knows what's going on. So our ability to communicate, over communicate, is, I think, going to be really important. So, Boris, I appreciated the message you sent out with the information that we can use to kind of broadcast the May 4th meeting. On
that note, Christine, so we are within GSA after strategic communication, so they're going to be doing some more promoting. And tomorrow they're sending a message to the full agency. So we'll probably get a lot of GSA signups out of that message. That we're right before Earth Day too. So Earth Day is April 22nd. So they're going to be doing a full special issue of our internal newsletter. And so that's going to come out tomorrow. So we can probably see more signups.
Good.
Yeah.
And some of the other messaging that resonated was, while progress has been made, it's not nearly enough and it's not nearly fast enough. So that was kind of like a resounding, and from all different kind of levels of experts that came at it from a different perspective. So it just reinforced for me the importance of this work, and, you know, I'm so appreciative of everybody's efforts and commitment to it. So, and I agree also, we are running, and we, you know, I'm not a good runner. So when I stop running, it takes a lot of motivation to get back up and run again. So we want to keep moving. Okay, so let me quickly just go through a couple of things. And so minutes, I'm not clear. Is there anything that administratively, Stephanie, that we need to do prior to the May 4th meeting to be all caught up? I just want to make sure, I kind of lost track of the minutes and where we were.
No, there's nothing that you need to do. Boris and Skylar will be sending out a DocuSign for you guys to sign the minutes. And like I said, for the meetings moving forward, just make sure to add minutes onto your agenda so people can go back to review them. If they have any comments or any changes they would like to make, we can always do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then what I would like us to do is ramp up kind of our focus on speakers, and starting to queue up some speakers either that can reinforce. I guess where I'm kind of struggling is, should we start teeing up speakers for the next set of recommendations we have listed? Should we continue to focus on some of the recommendations we're making, or can we do a little bit of both?
So I have an opinion on that. I think you could do a little bit of both, because it'll be interesting. I think it'll be really helpful when we get the feedback from GSA to see where you want to put, but I don't think it will hurt to sort of do some looking at both, and having Luke and Nicole here, I think is same advice for you all, you know, and I think, Luke, you guys have been working on some speakers already, so you've got some good ones that you've been connecting with. So I don't think it hurts to, I mean, that's almost an ongoing thing, because speakers, it's, you know, a lot of what drives the thought processes that we'll get into. So I think a little bit of both, that would be my suggestion, but I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, and Chris and Nigel and I have been talking about some speakers with Keith. Nigel and I have been talking about speakers to kind of to accelerate partnerships. So if we feel like there's been some acceptance or guidance or alignment, if I may say, with all of the groups in some of our discussions, that could help us to really be focused. So when we get speakers that are outside the government space, we can tell them that we really want you because it fits our process. Like, your input would advance our work, and that typically gets speakers fired up to show up when they know that they're advancing work, than when they just feel like they're just pontificating.
I agree. And so what I would encourage is that we actually begin to actively go ahead and have outreach with some of those organizations to see if we can't get some speakers teed up. I don't think we need to wait, because you know, based on the voting that we did, and based on the feedback we've gotten from a lot of feedback, particularly from GSA, I think that third recommendation on the networking group and the list of organizations that can help spread the word, they're going to want us to go on that, and we want to go on that. So if you and Nigel can kind of, and Keith, if you guys have contacts there that you want to reach out to and start teeing them up against our public meeting calendar, you know, updating the speakers document. The only speaker I have kind of in the works is Greg Crabb to come in and speak to us about the benefits of a maturity model. And I think that would still be very worthwhile. We're just working through the calendar on that, but I think we need to put rubber to the road for Rod on nuts and bolts, getting speakers lined up.
Okay, so Keith and I and Nigel will meet, and then maybe you and I can just maybe make sure that the speakers are aligned with the meetings, that, you know, that we have some flow, we have some thought leadership in that work, and how we bring them on, or when, and who the right people. Yeah. Okay, great. We'll do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then we can just use that Speakers Bureau document to kind of have it. And so at our next meeting, I'd like us to be able to go through that document and say, okay, you know, maybe we tee Greg up first if he's ready to go, but then who's coming in next, and how do we create a runway on that?
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
So jumping in on process again. So we're taking a break on the public meeting right after the May 4th. So the next public subcommittee meeting will be the last week in May. So that's where you'll be looking for a speaker for the last week in May. So we're going to be taking a break. This the week right after May 4th, we would have had the public subcommittee meeting. So we want to give you all a little break. We've been pushing you pretty hard, give you a little time to catch your breath. And then the last week in May will be your next public meeting for the subcommittee.
May I just say that I am super appreciative of that tiny little break.
Yes, I know. We're
The
very aware
breathing-
of this. It's like,
Well, I think it goes both ways because you and
Yeah.
Stephanie are running full steam ahead too, to just have a moment to pause and breathe a little bit before we jump back in.
yeah, that's
So
the plan.
grateful, so grateful.
Good.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
that's the idea. And I really like what you said, Farad. I think that's a really good way of thinking about your speakers. I mean, you want to bring people in like that are going to help you move the ball down the field. And I think that's a really good way you stated that. You know, I like, you know, we have Soraya Correa. She just rock star. I mean, she really put some stuff that ignited some really good thoughts. We had Andy yesterday talking about change management. So I think that's a really good way to think about your speakers. You know, really talk to them beforehand. You know, just make sure that you get a feel for them. Are they really going to help us advance? Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that reinforcing that it's all right to call them, engage, you know,
Mhm.
similar to like what we did with Antonio. We kind of flushed out the session so they can align. And I think we're kind of moved beyond this general exploratory kind of mindset. And now we're really can hone in on getting speakers that are subject matter experts in these areas of these recommendations, which will be good. And speaking of that, so the last thing I had on the list for us to talk about today was as we move forward, you know, in order to be able to move fast, sorry, my lights are going on and off, faster and more efficiently, you know, this concept of maybe taking recommendations and having recommendation champions. So if people feel very passionate about it, or that is your core center of expertise that you bring to the subcommittee, we might be able to kind of divide and conquer, work on things in parallel, bring them back to the subcommittee and the full committee more at a higher frequency level so that we're kind of moving more balls forward. So that's kind of a concept. I'd like to see if there's any thoughts on that. Farad, what are your thoughts there?
You know, can you say that again? I really didn't capture all that because I was trying to capture, like, what do
Oh,
you?
I apologize. Yeah, no problem. It was about like, kind of like we did it towards the very end where we said, hey, this group was really passionate about recommendation 1, so take it and run with it. You know, we had another group that was, you know, I had more experience with the maturity model, so I took that recommendation and ran with it. So we'd like to be able to do that going forward and kind of divide some of the workload but be able to move in parallel on multiple recommendations at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. We were fortunate enough that we had, you know, there's difference between trailblazers and settlers. And I think we trailblazed a lot of issues, but we have really good people who are good settlers, right? So I think as we look at those issues, we need to talk about what things can people settle on and do really well. While they may not have been trailblazing for us, they can really build upward fast and strong. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to have some of those conversations because I'm going to pick on Keith because I can, right? We've been running hard, and while Keith may not have been in those discussions on the document, he may be a really good settler for managing and helping the speakers to feel aligned and a part of the process. So, you know, while you running point guard and I'm the wing guard, you know, he may be a really good postman, right? So we need to talk around how do we put people in their positions so they can succeed, right? We want people, and I know this is a public meeting and I'm using a lot of basketball analogies, so forgive me, but I do believe that it's important that we operate in our swim lanes where we're the strongest because we'll get the best outcomes. And I don't think that we know everyone's strong swim lane yet because we're doing all this stuff virtually. And I think as we start talking and learning more about one another, we'll capture that.
If I'm more of the 6 man, you know. All right, so that's where we'll be.
But yeah, I love that. Like, how do we create, it's tough virtual and it's tough because, you know, it's a volunteer committee and people have significant time commitments. We've seen that, you know, people are traveling and they have commitments and teaching. And so how do we create an environment where people can bring their best skills to, you know, what brought them to the committee in the first place, bring those skills and expertise to bear on as we go forward. And I think that's a great thing to aspire to now that we are running. You know, getting organized was clunky, but now we're not there. We are a team. We're going to be moving forward. So, and Farad, I have to give you kudos. So not only do you love sports analogies, you use them in the appropriate season as they're going on. So we did football in the fall. Now it's the NBA playoffs. So kudos.
Yeah. And I think it's important when we are together. This is why I think it's going to be so much power in that room. We'll hear people's voices, and people will hopefully, this is where, you know, Stephanie and Boris, I mean, we trust y'all because y'all listen really well, and then y'all come in and give us direction and guidelines. We're going to need probably some of that support in really placing people in the right place, right? So like, let people have their free flowing discussion around this purposeful document, and then ask people, hey, where do you see your strength? I mean, are you a shooting guard? Are you know, do you pick people? Do you play defense? I mean, you know, we really ask people, and I think people should feel confident about it, because we're not asking them to swim outside their lane. We're saying, tell us in your lane, how do you support these 2, 4, 6 initiatives? And once they say yes, I'm sure we're going to catalyze our work faster, because we'll see where they're strong at. I mean, who knew that Nicole was the Google Docs champion? I mean, that's not on her resume, right? That wasn't on her description, but that pegboard, draft board, all that stuff, that all came together because we found her strength, right? That's her strong swim lane. And that was really good for us getting to where we're at.
Yeah, we're all using Jamboards now, Nicole, since you started that. So other parts of my team, I'm using Jamboards for other stuff that had nothing to do with the GAFAC.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was awesome. So I think that's great. Those are great. And, you know, I want to open it up for anyone else who wants to weigh in before we open it up for public input. I don't know if we have anyone from the public on, but we'll do that.
So before we go there, let me just piggyback with Farad too. So we're going to do a meeting on the May 3rd administrative meeting at GSA. So whoever can be there, and one of the things we're going to talk about, Farad, it's just the feedback on process. You know, how do we, and this, what you just said right now, I think it's a really important piece of feedback. How do we help people really feel like they're in a good place? So we send out the survey. By the way, if you haven't completed, please do so. So we want to get everybody's feedback, and then we're going to create a report, synthesize findings, and then we're going to share with everybody. Here's what we can do to improve our processes going forward. Because that's where Stephanie and I come in. Want to comply with the FAC rules, but we want to do it in an efficient way that's really effective in using the skill. But go ahead, Stephanie.
But Boris, I just want to add, I think that may be an opportunity to actually address what Farad just said. Probably ask, you know, where do you find your strengths when it comes to this? And by that time, we would hope that everyone has read the recommendations. And maybe we should send out an email asking individuals, please make sure to read the recommendations on May 3rd. We would like your feedback. And we'd like you to consider where your strengths lie as it relates to these recommendations.
Yeah.
Or the committee in general, so that they're prepared. We're not catching them off guard.
Yep, I made a note of that as Farad was talking, because I think that would be golden for us while we're together.
That's great. That's awesome. Okay. So I'm not sure if we have, well, we do have some people on that aren't on the committee. So we could open it up for public input if anybody has public comment or input they would like to provide. We already put enough pressure on Luke today, so we don't.
Yeah, if you're talking about me, I have no more comments.
Great, thanks. Okay. All right. So with that, I think, I'm sorry, Boris, go ahead.
Christina, one suggestion for you and for Rad to consider. If you the people that are here in this meeting right now, if you want to get some help building the slides, I mean, you could definitely ask. I mean, it's your show. Just if you want to solicit some help with an email after this, but you can ask the people that are here right now if anybody would like to help assemble the slides.
Somebody would love to take
I
the slides.
I would recommend a follow-up email too for everybody, but I would
will,
just, yeah.
Yeah, my thought was to put a skeleton together and then let people kind of peck off that. I think it's sometimes it's a little easier than a blank slate for folks. So I think the key will be, you know, as we build out those slides, to Farad's point, you know, I'd ask that you take the time to read them, because once you get on the Google Doc and you find it. But you know, is your voice being heard? Like, is your voice being captured? Did we have the essence of why this recommendation is important? Is that coming through? Because I think that's the real art part of this. The science part, you know, we have the report, we have the science part, but the key is, like, is it going to resonate? Because that's part of our job too, is to make sure that these resonate and that we articulate why they're important, so that they're taken seriously. I can't underestimate that.
And you can get artsy with, you know, putting some cool pictures. Stacy, not to single you out, but I really like your presentation on LCA when you came and spoke to, I believe it was the Policy and Practice Subcommittee. So, you know, those were really nice slides. So that's an example of, you know, you use the power of this group, but not to single you out, Stacy, but
I'm happy to make pretty graphics and slide decks all day long. I actually really enjoy that. So if there's something I can do there, I'd be more than happy to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Particularly be thinking about, like, if there's some good icons we could use or something, you know, relative to our recommendations, that would be super cool. Is there anyone who wants to put the slide deck together?
I would just need direction. I'm more than happy to. I'm pretty efficient at doing that if I know.
All right. Well,
I
I'll
have some
send you the
guidelines.
template, and it's really taking that template and we can resend that out, and then kind of gleaming the key things from the report, and we can iterate back and forth if you want. That'd be great, Stacy. I'll follow up with you right after this. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, any last go around, any comments for the good of the order? Well, I appreciate you all, and I appreciate you getting on today, and a little bit more work to do before we get to May 4th, but the finish line is in sight, at least for this benchmark. More to come. So Boris, I'll hand it back to you and Stephanie.
Well, again, thank you for joining in today. So we have a lot to do, but this is very helpful conversation today. I'm just really glad to see all three subcommittee leadership represented today, because we cover some business that we didn't even plan to cover. So that was good. So let's go ahead and adjourn this meeting.
Excellent.